And Elijah, I drew it on a piece of paper down the aisles. It's 4 shots. How he would emerge from behind him and come from the ceiling. How Elijah would. That's the first time Elijah wears his costume in that scene. How he comes around, and that orderly has been following the sound of the wheels, the squeaky wheels, and he's like, "What is that sound? What is that sound?" And he gets to that room that they're in, which is where the patients keep their items, where they keep when they first came to the hospital, where they keep all their clothes. And he follows this squeaking sound to this room, and then you have him come around the corner. And that's all that we shot, is those shots right there, that's it, like that, and seeing him beating the guy after he's dead, and all this stuff, and and kind of like that quirky little smile he has again, hey partner, like don't get upset with me, we're a team, right? And imagining all that is the old school way of, I can show you the movie in drawings, the final movie, I can show it to you beforehand.
You mean the whole movie?
The whole movie, yeah. The whole movie you can see. In fact, it's in my office when we're shooting. You'll come into my office and you can see the whole movie drawn out, from beginning to end, and how many shots per day we're going to shoot and all that stuff.
Està funcionant bé la traducció simultània que teniu? No hi ha cap problema? Tot bé? Bueno. Ángel, si quieres disparar tú también al público, adelante.
No sé si estáis ya en precalentamiento, seguro que sí, o ya estáis dispuestos a hacer alguna pregunta ya. Se ve fatal, levantaros por favor y...
Sí, y veo muchos también por el fondo, vamos a intentar ir en orden, y si nos puede ayudar también David, como gran regidor. Estaremos por aquí, luego un grupo si acaso.
Adelante.
Hablo en castellano, lo siento, no hablo muy bien inglés. Buenas tardes, gracias por estar con nosotros, para disfrutar con todos nosotros que somos grandes aficionados de tus películas. Una pregunta, la diferencia que hay entre los superhéroes que vemos en los cómics y tus personajes está en el hecho que son personas normales, que en la mayoría de las ocasiones tienen una enfermedad y es algo que puede pasar entre nosotros. ¿Es una experiencia personal tuya que has tenido con personas que has conocido y que has mudado en tus películas? ¿O qué algo hay de...? O sea, seguramente esta diferencia es lo que te pone, para mí, en un nivel superior a todas las otras películas que hablan de superhéroes. Tus superhéroes tienen un carácter especial, son enfermos. Explícanos por qué.
Good afternoon. This gentleman considers himself a big fan of your work, and he thinks that the difference with the superheroes that appear in the movie are that they are real people, and not only real, some of them are sick, handicapped. And is this based on some kind of a real experience in your life of meeting people with this kind of sickness or handicap? And he also thinks that this specific circumstance in your movies of these characters put your movies, your superhero movies, in a higher level than the average superhero movie.
What draws me is, wanting to believe that there's extraordinary things in the real world. Like what's our movie? As we talk with our partners about the movie, and I say, what's the tone of this movie? It's what if Marvel was real? That's the tone of the movie. What if it's real? How could it be real? And so when you think, like, if you're looking at it through a child's perspective of the world, and say I was a permanent child, by the way, it's probably true, permanent child, and I'm going to convince you guys that there's still magic in the world, there's still extraordinary. I'm going to convince you, I'm going to use adult arguments for it. So I would say, do you know that there's this disorder called osteogenesis imperfecta, where your bones are very, very brittle, and I could just do that and break them. Okay, we agree that exists, right? We're all in agreement that it exists. So, the opposite of that must exist as well. And so that person doesn't know it. They've been in a car accident and didn't get hurt, and they got lucky, and they've never broken a bone, and they've never actually got damaged. Well, because the density of their bones are different and all, but so they're kind of a real life superhero, right? So, and that's exactly how Elijah thought, was, wow, if someone like me exists, the opposite of me must exist. And wow, that's almost like what they draw comic books about, right? That guy wouldn't know who he was, wouldn't know that he could do these things. He just never gets hurt, right? So it's not extraordinary to him. And so I'm using my real thinking about how extraordinary we are, you know. And then James's character, Kevin Wendell Crumb, that plays a person with dissociative identity disorder, is the most incredible thing that I think exists on the planet. That this disorder, which occurs only to children that have been sexually and physically abused from 1 to 5 years old, repeatedly, 1 to 5. Some of those children can develop the ability to start over, start a new identity in every possible way. And not like I'm just changing personalities, 100% believe it in their souls. A new human being exists, a new soul exists, and their body responds accordingly. They can lift more weight, they can have diabetes, they can be allergic to a bee sting, and all the other personalities are not. One personality can have diabetes, 1 out of your 24 personalities, and you need insulin when you're that personality. And that's an extreme extension of when we get anxious, our blood pressure goes up. It's a connection on that continuum between our mind and our body, but a superhero level of that. You know, that he can believe that he's strong enough to crush this or do that, and you can, to the limits of a human body, but to the far, far limits of it. So thinking like that, what are examples in the real world of how extraordinary we all are?
Hi, Mr. Shymalan. Thank you for coming. It's an honor to have you here. You mentioned just before the clip that you always envisioned this as being a saga of sorts. But obviously when you made Unbreakable, I'm assuming James McAvoy wasn't on your radar.
Yes.
At what point did he get on your radar? Was there anybody you had in mind for Beast or for Kevin beforehand? And how did he come onto the scene?
That's a great question. Very intuitive, working it out backwards by the timetable. So I wrote the role for Philip Seymour Hoffman, and so he was in my head when I wrote. Like I wrote it for James. I wrote it for Sam, Bruce, and Philip. In my head was the 3 actors, and you can see, you can guess why I thought that would be a great thing. And then when I made Unbreakable. Well, when I was making Unbreakable, the whole storyline was kind of roughly in the shape that it is now in the trilogy, roughly. You know, in the original outline, this guy comes and survives a train wreck and is told, hey, I think you're a superhero from this character. And he convinces them. Meanwhile, over here, this guy with this disorder has abducted 3 girls and keeps telling them this beast is coming to eat you, this beast is coming to eat you. And in the end of my outline, David decides to test out whether he is or not by going and touching people in the train station. And Kevin Wendell Crumb's characters have gone to the train station to awaken the beast, and he bumps into him, follows him back, and has a fight with the. That was the original architecture. So Kevin, when I started to write the script, it felt so complicated, and I was rushing things. And for me, I'm always saying slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. You know, you can tell from my movies, I love the first act of movies. I love the setup. You know, and the reverse is true for storytelling most of the time. Get as fast as you can. Get everything done as fast as you can. And I'm very character driven and want to stay with the characters. So I ended up making a whole movie about just David coming to believe that he is who he is. And then when it was only those 2, I said, well, there's no villain. I wonder who the villain is. And then I turned Elijah into the villain. And so it went like that. But it was always part of it. And I think when Unbreakable came out, it was very weird when it came out. There was a wonkiness. If I could go back, I remember the 29-year-old version of me lying on the sofa, and I was kind of sad. I was depressed. I was like, hey, nobody gets my movie. Nobody wants to see this movie. And that's what I felt like, you know? And at that time, it was perceived that comic books were not a good genre to make movies about. So it was like, don't do that. No one will come see it. So that was the feeling. And we never talked about it in promotion. We never referenced it. And so it was kind of an ambiguous campaign. And it felt like Sixth Sense Part 2 because it was me and Bruce making a movie together. Ooh, there was a train wreck. I wonder if he's dead again. That was like what they were going for. And I'm like, wait, no, that's not what we're making. And it wasn't even scary, right? So I just made a scary movie. So there's a lot of confusion, and the marketplace. I was more of a kid at that time. I didn't really have a say in anything, and I didn't really understand marketing and marketplace. And I would and have said to my partners as I've grown up and said, hey, trust me, if this subject feels good to me, there are others like me that will come. So comic books, there must be other people that enjoy this, you know, that they'll come, or aliens, or this, or whatever I'm doing, and let's really emphasize the uniqueness of the piece. Thank you.
N'hi havia una més aquí, n'hi havia, no? I després passem allà baix. Aquí? Pues vinga.
No, me.
Sí.
Hello.
Hello. I'm a huge fan.
Thank you so much.
I adore your work. Voy a realizar la pregunta en español, no quiero...
I love your t-shirt. He's wearing a Jaws t-shirt.
Thank you. La familia es un tema recurrente en sus películas. Normalmente, bueno, es un tema recurrente y central, tanto en El Protegido, que se veía esa relación entre el padre y su hijo, y de cómo el hijo veía que el padre era como un auténtico superhéroe, y en Múltiple veíamos a esta chica que había tenido ciertos trastornos con su padre y demás, y todo el trauma que tenía detrás el protagonista de Múltiple. Me preguntaba si ahora en Glass ese volvería a ser un tema central, algo a discutir en él. Muchas gracias.
Family is definitely one of the most important and central issues or themes in your movies. In Unbreakable, you have the father and son relationship. In Split, you have the daddy issues of the protagonist, and also the piece that also comes probably from an abuse past. Is this also going to be a central theme in Glass?
Yeah, that's a fantastic. You don't know how perfect that question is. That's like, wait till you see the movie. You'll be like, I can't believe I asked the perfect question. Perfect question. It's all about family. When you see that clip, doesn't obviously, that was just a moment there you were saying, but I couldn't really show you, the whole movie. But it's all about family and the connections of it. And when we were talking about what are the strengths of our movie, like if you say DC makes movies a certain way about this subject, Marvel makes movies a certain way. Well, what's my take on it? Even though this is a small set of these three movies, what's my take? It's family centered. What is the ultimate superpower is the strength of your family, and so very much the movie is about the father and the son relationship in this movie, in David Dunn and his son, a mother-son relationship in Mrs. Price and Elijah, and her believing in her son and understanding why he feels the way he feels. He feels that he doesn't fit in the world. It's just very poignant. And then Kevin Wendell Crumb and Casey, who become, essentially like their own family members, because they've gone through shared trauma, and those relationships that I just described are the center of the piece, and everything revolves around the emotion of that. And that, again, for me, that's if you think in terms of like, I think Marvel is a little bit more character-based than DC has been in the past, and I enjoy that, and we want to keep on going. Again, as I was describing, whenever I have to choose plot versus character, like when you read a book, right, in the form of the literary form, if you think of it as a graph, and the character is the horizontal and the plot is vertical. In a novel, the vertical can be very small. It can just be about a day or a moment, or when he came home from work. It can be very small, and the character can be as wide as possible, and that's so satisfying. That format allows for that. You can be in the character's head and enjoy all the nuances. In movies, this graph, the plot has to be very high, and that pressure to do that squeezes this other part of the graph. So you don't have time to do anything. You got to keep on going. Oh, the boat's going to sink. The boat's going to sink. You got to get to the thing. And you squeeze it, and once the plot's going, you don't have time to stop and say, I want to show nuance about a character. So that's the fight I always loved. I make my dreams and my goals are as high and as wide as we can make that graph. The higher it goes, the more accessible it is to people, right? The movement of that. It's a structure-driven art form. Cinema is structure-driven, and so if it's not, then we call it art movies, right? And it starts to become wide on the bottom part of it, and the plot's very, very low, right? But then the audience shrinks. And so the goal is, how can I tell the highest story with the widest, character base? So that's been my dream and my struggle as I tell stories. In fact, your T-shirt, the Jaws T-shirt, is that's like the perfect movie in terms of what we're talking about here. In that the line is straight up high, a giant shark's eating everybody. We had to stop it. But along the way, such character, such incredible grounded performances, and he got that balance perfect, a master. He got it perfectly, and it's always been a kind of a North Star for me, that movie.
I have to add that Angel wrote 2 books in Jaws.
Bueno, en principio agradecerte el enfoque que has conseguido de los superhéroes adaptados al cine, aunque en tu caso no has adaptado ningún cómic, sino que lo has creado directamente. Creo que personalmente has entendido en profundidad lo que sienten los superhéroes internamente, esa oscuridad, esa soledad. Quería preguntarte en base a esto, si en la vida real el éxito o la fama tiene algo que ver con los superhéroes. Si te has sentido de alguna manera un superhéroe y te has encontrado con ese doble filo, esa oscuridad y esa soledad. Segundo, en el caso de que tuvieras adaptar un cómic de Marvel, ¿lo harías como lo hace Marvel o los traerías a tu mundo de realidad, que es precisamente lo que a mí me gusta? Y después, una tercera pregunta sería, ¿cuál es tu... No, es muy rápida de contestar. ¿Cuál es tu película favorita adaptada al cine de cómics, de superhéroes? Gracias. ¿Cuál es su favorita?
That's a matter. That's quite a look he gave him. So, well, thank you very much, and also for being able to adapt the world of the comics with a twist and in a very, very original way, like nobody done before. And we would like to understand, how do you understand, or how do you feel, because you understood exactly how a superhero thinks and feels in terms of solitude, of being maybe alienated. So this is probably one of the high points of your films, is understanding the personality of these dark heroes. This gentleman would like to know if maybe because of success, of fame, do you think you have some kind of relationship with this, let's say, dark or obscure personality of the superheroes you described in your films? He called it the double edge that fame and success can have. Are you related in some way with these specific kind of characters?
Wow, that's a good question. That was a good question. Being honest, being famous and being successful it's a weird feeling, especially because I don't live in Los Angeles, and where I live, just no one's in film, and it's just regular people. Everyone around me, just regular, And when I go to the store or something, they do look at you like there's some magic that you got. You have some magic, and you feel like a fraud. I mean, meaning me, I feel like a fraud. I'm just a regular person that is scared and doesn't know, and all of those things, and you feel this weird conflict in the Superman, Clark Kent part of it, You go, wait a minute, I'm just Clark Kent, that's all, you've mistook the Superman part. So you do definitely feel that part. On the other side of this, and I said this at the beginning, I truly believe in each of our abilities to be extraordinary. So in that way, I'm unapologetic, because I believe you could be incredibly extraordinary, and I believe the universe, is on our side. These are things I believe, and they manifest in certain ways. I concentrate, write this script, write this role of a guy who has 24 personalities. I write the specificity of it. Someone who's been abused, who can play the emotion of that. Someone who can play a woman, who can play a child. Someone who can play a beast. Someone who plays, who's this? And James McAvoy walks up to me at Comic-Con, walks up to me at Comic-Con and says hello, and I look at him, and he has his hair is like growing back, it's this long, and I'm like, this is the guy. This is the guy I'm writing, right? And he walks right up to me, and I believe in extraordinary things, so in that manner. So I do believe in the superheroes in all of us, and how we can manifest. So I'm this weird contradiction of like feeling, like my characters, lost and burdened and struggle and don't feel special a lot. Don't feel, most of the time, I feel completely powerless and not special at all, and I can't believe I think the way I think and all of those things. And when someone doesn't believe in me, I agree with them inside. I'm like, yeah. And then there's this other side of me that awakens. And I go, wait a second. You know, I did that. He walked up to me out of nowhere, you know? And when you see the performance that James gives, you saw a little bit of it here, it's, crazy jaw-dropping performance. I mean, we couldn't even shoot the movie. Everyone was applauding so much. It was like the perfect person to play the most amazing performance that you've ever seen. I mean, you can't miss it kind of performance. And he walked up to me, you know, and so those kind of things. And again, even James himself, as an actor, going, how does a human being do what he did? He plays 21 personalities in 21. And it's staggering how he does it and moves around. And so you can hear it even in my conversation, and I'm being perfectly honest. I both, you know, doubt myself all the time and believe in the greatness that's in all of us.
And the second question was, if theoretically you would have to adapt a Marvel comic book, would you think you would approach the material in the traditional way, or maybe you will take it to your own specific, let's call it darker side, or?
That's another really interesting, you're asking really interesting questions. How do I answer this? I'm trying to answer it in a way. There was some conversations of that actually happening. And, and I said, you don't really want that. You really and here's why. They have this wonderful tone that they've come up with, and you know, Kevin and all those guys, they've nailed exactly their angle on that source material. It's from, you know, Stanley's source material, and they have that kind of buoyant tone and kind of making fun of itself and all that stuff, and they found the right way to do that for them. And you really don't want me directing. You don't want Wes Anderson directing it. You don't want Quentin directing it. You don't want someone with such a heavy accent coming in and jamming it to be an extension of us, which is what we would inherently make. Again, who knows? You'll read tomorrow I'm directing the next Iron Man. But that was my instinct, was you found such a wonderful way to tell those stories, but it needs to be, like, you can see I'm trying to tell you exactly what I feel at this moment, and that way it's meaningful to me. And so I have found my weapon is not CGI. That's not what I'm strong at. I'm not strong at excess. I'm not good at spectacle. That's not my strength. I'm not actually a techie guy that gets off on that stuff. I'm like, I want to make this, you know. I'm in awe of those guys, the guys, the Camerons and the Spielbergs and all those guys that can do all that stuff. It's just amazing. I'm very much a quiet, like the dinner table scene for me is like, yeah, bring it on. I love it. We're gonna kill them with that dinner table scene. They're gonna love this. And you know, like when you see Glass, there's an 11-minute scene in there of dialogue, an 11-minute scene, and it's my action scene as they're firing away and everybody's saying what they're saying and things are getting revealed and you're just leaning in, you know. And so I've learned that that's, you know, to do those things too. In this world, I think now there's two things we were talking about. It's why you come to the cinema rather than look it on your phone or look it on your computer. Why would you come to the cinema? And it's the group experience of seeing things that are funny and scary and gasp, that make you gasp and are surprising to experience that together. But also another thing is you can do the spectacle thing and say, oh, you have to see this in the cinema, it's so spectacular. And that's definitely a reason I go to the theater. But maybe there's another one, which is there's nothing like this anywhere else. There's just this very specific. And so that thing that makes it very different and pokey is the reason to come see the movie. And so if you come on Monday morning and you didn't see Glass and everybody else in the office saw Glass, you're out of luck because there's nothing else like it, and you can't ever tell what it was like, and you've never seen a performance like James and the tone and things that happen. You will be left out, and that's what I'm trying to use, that strength of how weird and unusual and specific it is as our great weapon. That was a long-winded explanation about Marvel, but.
And finally, the third question.
What?
That's an easy one. Maybe not. It's not. What's your favorite comic book film adaptation?
God, that is a good one. No one's asked me that, believe it or not. I loved almost all of the first Iron Man. I thought that was really like but that's when they discovered their tone, when Robert and Jon Favreau kind of came at it with that kind of humanized, grounded. In fact, that was more grounded than I think some of the other stuff when they go into fantasy. But that source material of the alcoholic guy who's kind of like the anti-hero was really fantastic and the perfect guy. Again, you have to get the film gods have to be on your side. You know, James has to walk up and Robert has to be there. And that happened, but I thought that was great. And of course, I love Nolan's Dark Knight, and Heath's performance was absolutely touching. Like, I can tell when an actor, I don't even have to see their face, so when an actor, when we're about to go, if I'm wherever I'm near, and if I can see them standing, I can tell by the way they're standing if they're in the right headspace. And I remember seeing that shot of Heath from the back, I don't know if you remember, and he's just standing there in the street, and he just kind of, and all I needed to see was that, and I was like, this actor he's there. He's there in a way that he's not pretend, and he's there, and I cannot wait to see it. So I had those emotions about those movies.
Malauradamente, desgraciadamente, última pregunta, pero yo me sabe mal porque hemos estado sobre todo, a ver si podemos ver a alguna de las personas que habían por allí. Bueno, la primera que se ha levantado, entonces. Muchas gracias.
Hola, gracias. Mr. Knight, welcome and thank you very much for being here. I'm a PhD student and I'm delivering my PhD dissertation next month about your work, so you cannot imagine how lucky I feel now.
Thank you.
Giving you just only one question, but I'm feeling very, very lucky. I give my notes, so I'm sorry, but I have to read it because I'm very nervous now, so I will try to do this. At the first of the conversation, he said he told you that one of your greatest influences are Hitchcock, and also you have confessed many times that one of your very big masters is Steven Spielberg. Spielberg and other directors or other fantastic cinema directors are considered by several theorists as the first generation of fantastic storytellers. And someone is talking now about there is a new generation, a second fantastic storytellers generation. And some people is telling that maybe you are one of the forerunners of this generation. Do you think you are? And if you think you are a part of this generation, do you think you can be associated to names like Bayona, Guillermo del Toro, J.J. Abrams, Duffer Brothers, and other people that are bringing out original stories and talking about fantasy in ordinary worlds like you do?
What's the last part? In what? In order?
The last part is, if you are a part of this second generation, do you think your name could be associated as a part of this generation with other names like Bayona, Guillermo del Toro, Duffer Brothers, J.J. Abrams, and other directors that are bringing fantasy facts to ordinary worlds?
I see. To ordinary worlds. Is that what? Yeah, that's what I did here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you. That's amazing honor that you chose to do that. It's funny. I've been staggered because I've had people send me their PhDs on my films, and so I would, if you please can send me yours when you're done. That would be great. That would be great. I would love to have it. I would make sense that there's a generation like clumped together because we were all, I mean, I was 7 when I saw Star Wars and 12 when I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, and in that world I was too young to see Jaws in the theaters, so I missed that one, but you know, I was right in that pocket when, you know, E.T., all of that was made for my age group. Like they were hitting me between, I mean, I don't really get, you know, like fanatical religious people, except when I think of those movies. Because that's the way I feel. When I came out, I was like, oh my God, I'm a zealot. I remember, I got in the car, I was in the station wagon when, in those days you could sit in the front seat in the station wagon, nobody cared. And I was sitting in the front seat and got in the car after watching Star Wars, and my sister was talking. She was a teenager, I was, you know, 7. And I was like, can you just be quiet? Can we just all just be quiet? I just want to think about what we just saw. And she's like, you're so weird. And I was having a religious, like, I was like, this is real, guys. You don't understand. I think they're talking about real stuff, the Force and all of this stuff. And yeah, and an alien can land in your backyard. That could happen. I'm gonna keep a watch out. Like, you know, that was literally how I, you know, behaved and thought. And so those filmmakers, I remember, and then these were all, you know, iconic experiences for me. When I went to see Raiders of the Lost Ark, my friend and I went, and I didn't want to see it. I didn't know what archaeology was. I thought it was some science thing. I was like, this is ridiculous. And we get to the theater, and it was sold out, and we couldn't sit together. So I ended up sitting next to an older couple, and they saw how scared. I was a really timid kid, so this was like crazy scary for me to watch this movie by myself in a seat. And they saw how scared I was, and they got me popcorn. And then the mountain of the Paramount logo turned into a mountain, and the sound effects started changing, and that was it. And I was, you know, and why I bring up those is that group of filmmakers you talked about were all a little older than me, but teenagers, and experiencing the same thing. So it makes a lot of sense that as soon as a movie like that comes out, 20-some years later, there'll be another generation who went, I'm doing that. I want to feel that. I want to be, they made me feel like it was real, and I've been, you know, mimicking that feeling. And, you know, I want to keep that feeling alive in me. And so I keep telling stories like that. So, and I know JJ as a friend, and lightly know some of the filmmakers you mentioned, and they were like kids, you know, and when we're talking, if JJ and I are talking about movies and, you know, thinking about stories, it's just literally the same thing as me and the kids back then pretending with pillows, and, you know, and I would always direct the kids on, you know, how to be and pretend. It's the same thing, we're just doing it professionally. So it makes a ton of sense of they broke the mold, the Spielbergs, the Lucas, and then their children, which is us, like, you know, by the way, don't tell them that, they'll get upset if I say they don't, their children. But you know, the repercussions make a lot of sense that we're all so inspired to feel those feelings again. Again, thank you so much for writing that.